Bum 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 bum. Hello, Joanne, Gino, Olga. Come on in here. You're the lucky ones. You get here early, and you get a little extra. Oh yeah. Hey, Mike. Hey, Matt, Kevin. Good to see you all, because you know what time it is. We've got 1,000 viewers coming up now. And so it's time for the simultaneous sip. Please join me. Here it comes. Oh, gets better every time. Aloha. And so, did any of you see the tweet from the president that I retweeted, in which he was referring to the clip of Paris Bedard on CNN talking to Phil Mudd? It was one of my favorite tweets lately. I'm going to have to read it to you. So I hope you all saw the clip. Everybody saw that, right? It was a clip of CNN's pundit Phil Mudd going, oh, well, let me try not to get into his mind. I'll say appearing to go crazy. So I'm not a medical expert, so I'm not going to say that I know what's happening in Phil Mudd's mind, but yeah, here was the president's characterization. Just watched former intelligence official Philip Mudd become totally unglued and weird while debating wonderful Paris Dennard over Brennan's security clearance. Dennard destroyed him. But Mudd is in no mental condition to have such a clearance. Should be revoked, and revoked is in capitals. And then he says, at Sean Hannity. So here's the funny part. So how long has it been that people have been criticizing President Trump's mental state? But how many times have we seen the president in public, and how many times have we seen him at all hours? We've seen him morning, night. We've seen when he tweets in the middle of the night. We've seen him do all kinds of things in all kinds of contexts. But what his critics would have you believe is that he's only crazy when you're not looking. That's what they have now. The most on-camera, transparent president of all time. I mean, it's not even close, right? The most transparent president. He's tweeting at all hours. He's doing rallies. And out of all that public exposure, the only times that he's crazy is when you're not watching. But then you've got Philip Mudd, who, again, I'm going to say acted crazy, because I don't know what's in his head. I can't give a medical diagnosis. But he acted crazy right in front of us. If you haven't seen the clips, there's some clips with Bill Maher. Now, Bill Maher typically would be, I would say, one of the more legitimate voices in any conversation, meaning that he's not nailed down to one side or the other. He's going to look at the facts more often than not. But when it comes to matters of Trump, and you hear him talking, again, I'm not qualified to diagnose anybody, but it looks crazy. It looks like Trump derangement syndrome, just to the casual observer. When he talks about Trump, he doesn't look normal. Now, he talks about it as treason and the end of the world, and he's gone so far as to say that maybe it'd be good to have an economic crash just to get rid of Trump. Those don't sound like stable thoughts. Again, I'm not a medical professional. I would not assume to know anybody's medical fitness by just looking at him on TV. But what's interesting here is that the best argument against the president is that, wait for it, here's the best argument against the president at the moment, that he's crazy when nobody's looking, even though we're always looking. But those few times we're not, totally crazy. Now keep in mind that I've spoken to the president, in a semi-private conversation with, other people in the room, but I've seen him off camera. And I didn't see any crazy there. Not a trace. All right. And usually you feel like you could detect it, right? People couldn't hide. Crazy's pretty hard to hide. But then you look at his critics, and we are to believe that although they act crazy in public, that when they get off the air, totally sane. Totally sane when nobody's looking. So that's what we have. Those are our two movies. That Trump is completely capable and in charge and sane whenever we're looking, no matter the time of day, the context. Doesn't matter if things are going well or bad. Sometimes he's more aggressive than others, but none of it looks crazy in public. And we haven't heard any of his allies say that he's crazy privately. Don't you think you'd find someone who is willing to say, something's going on there? You end up with only people like Omarosa, who has, no credibility. Do I know Penn Jillette? I've met. We have hung out a little bit one day. And I have seen his opinions, which he's keeping to himself, it sounds like. But we're to believe that the president's critics act crazy when we're watching, but they're totally sane when they get off camera. That's their best argument right now. And here's your homework assignment. When you're watching the criticisms of the president, and I think this week will be the ones that you hear the most, look for words that are mind-reading words, where the person talking about him is assuming his mental state. Let's see, here's an article, I won't tell you who wrote this. That Trump was surprised and bothered. So this is someone who was not in the room when this supposedly happened. It's a third party writing about somebody else who is unnamed, who is interpreting the president's inner thoughts and saying that he is surprised and bothered. Watch how often you see words that describe the president's inner feelings, his inner thoughts, without any kind of quote or exterior description of events. Yeah, so they're saying the president was furious, he was caught off guard, he was shocked, the president was disturbed, and when you see all of those words, they're usually coming from somebody who's writing after talking to a secret source. But why is it? Yeah, those are the words. Lashes out, bashes, feuds, worries about, he's concerned, he's panicked about. They're all mind-reading words. Mueller asked Don again Trump's state of mind. We don't know that, do we? Talk about Argento. No, that's just awful. So I'm not even going to talk about that. I'm not the one who wants to talk about all of the horrible sex scandals. I'll let the media handle all that stuff. That's not my beat. And then there was news that the Trump administration and ICE deported an actual Nazi, someone who, I don't know how old he was, but he worked at a Nazi concentration camp. Um, yeah. He's 95. Yeah, it's going to be harder and harder to keep holding up those old thoughts. So it seems to me that the anti-Trumpers are a little bit lost right now. Their best argument is that by themselves, the critics acting crazy in public, talking about the president who only acts crazy when nobody is watching. That's not a strong attack. Do you want to talk about Assange? I don't know a whole lot about that situation other than Rand Paul has suggested that Assange get a pardon, I believe, in order to testify. And I would be in favor of that. Manafort, there's no word yet, right? There's no verdict. But the Manafort deliberations continue on. Let's see if there's any update on that. Artist called Unhinged for playing rally. Unhinged. So unhinged is another one of those words that they like to call each other. Kevin Hart. Yeah. Don't know anything about him. Should we do bocce ball predictions on Manafort? Well, we don't have to. I think what we're seeing is all that deliberation tells you that probably we're heading toward a hung jury on at least some of those counts. So, no, I am uninformed. What am I uninformed about? I'm not denying that I'm uninformed, but I don't know which category you're talking about. I doubt you're going to get not guilty, but you might get Tim Cook to buy Tesla. I haven't heard anything about that. Is Omarosa's time over? It looks like it. It looks like it. Yeah, I think Omarosa's time in the sun has disappeared. So in this week, if you look at some of the things that have happened, there was great pushback about the president's military parade plans, but then the president got a price, and the price was too high, so he canceled it, like a completely normal person. And it just sort of took away all the fun. Then there was Omarosa, who the best attack they had on the president that week was somebody who has absolutely no credibility. No credibility whatsoever. So that didn't work out. Then you had Dennard, an African-American supporter of the president, goes on television and just annihilates the president's most vocal, and it matters in this case, white guy who was the biggest critic. And nobody had to, point out that Paris is African-American and Phil Mudd is not. It's just part of the story. And I think anybody who saw it would have the same conclusion that Paris absolutely obliterated him on air. So that was a bad day. So bad that you could watch the host of the TV, I forget who his name is, the CNN host, was the look on his face when Phil Mudd was acting, as the president would say, weird, was precious. That was just great. Then you've got, Avenatti running for president, which makes everything look ridiculous. So that just makes the whole Stormy Daniels thing look like it was trivial. Yes, there's Jim Sciutto? I don't know how to pronounce it. Oh, then you had, yeah, Clapper calling out Brennan for his rhetoric. This was an absolute slaughter, wasn't it? You've got the economy screaming along. This week was an absolute rout. So the president is just killing it. Eric Swalwell running for president. I heard he was thinking about it. Is that official? He'd be crazy not to. If you were Eric Swalwell, wouldn't you run for president? Now, I know Eric Swalwell. I don't know him like we hang out, but he's the congressperson for my area. Met him a few times. We have some mutual friends. So that would be interesting just to see a local guy running. Oh, Jim Carrey. Let's talk about Jim Carrey's Trump derangement syndrome artwork. If you were to separate, and I hope you've all seen it, Jim Carrey's doing art and doing a lot of anti-Trump looking cartoonish art. And I have two thoughts about it. The political opinion part of it looks like Trump derangement syndrome to most of you. But the actual art of it, the art skill, I'm going to say I frickin' love it. I know you hate to hear that. But just the quality of his artistic talent, it's really, really good. Even the stuff where the message I completely hate, I find myself very drawn to the talent. I'm completely blown away. For an artist who's also, for a comedian who's also an artist, it's pretty darn good. It's his own style. It doesn't look like anything else. It jumps off the page. The colors are great. It's really strong. All right. Carrey did too much acid, somebody said. Well, maybe, or maybe he did just enough because it's making his art pretty good. Okay, we've got at least a few people who agree with me on the art. It's very important to see if we can separate the artist from the opinion. I like it when people do it with me, and I'll try to do it with other people. He said he had an awakening. That sounds like drugs. Maybe good ones, not bad ones. You ever going to do some acid, Scott? I would... I'll give you an honest opinion to that. I'm very curious about acid. And I know lots and lots of people who have done acid. And some of them are the smartest people I know. The people who are literally geniuses and have, started companies and stuff like that. So I've done mushrooms once, and I felt like I only needed to do it once because it changes you forever in terms of how you see the world. I don't know that I would get anything out of acid. So because I don't know that it would benefit me, I have a barrier. If there's any risk involved whatsoever, and everything has risk, I'm not sure there's an upside for me personally. Yeah, so the new thing is microdosing, where you take a tiny bit of acid and you can still sort of function, but you see the world differently. That's sort of big in my part of the world. You're too old to do acid, somebody says. I don't think it works that way. Well, let me put it this way. When I'm 75 or 80, not 75, let's say 85. When I'm 85, I'm probably going to drop some acid. Probably. What do you got to lose? You're 85. If you like it, you like it. And if you don't like it, well, you're 85. You're going to die anyway. Don't microdose. Yeah. How many of you have done acid? Give me a check-in with me. And by the way, if there's anybody young listening to this, I do not recommend it. I have seen somebody just recently have a very bad week, at least in part because of acid. Yeah, people raising their hands. So we've got a number of people. Coming down is the worst, somebody said. Well, probably so. All right, 40 times, somebody said. Check, done it. Me, 3 times, yes, nope. Just reading your comments. Many mushrooms, check, check. Oh my God. Is it my imagination, or do I have an unusual number of acid-doing followers? Something strange is happening right now. It feels like I am on acid. Is it? Holy cow. A lot of you have done acid. Is it a coincidence that you're Trump supporters and you've done acid? Because, I don't mean that as a joke. I mean that literally. Wow. I'm going to throw in a hypothesis here. Here's my hypothesis. I'm going to hypothesize, without any data to back it, based on just what I'm seeing here. It might be that having done a hallucinogen, whether mushrooms or acid, might make you more able to see what's going on with Trump. I wonder if there's a correlation. Probably not, because the anti-FA people have probably all done acid. Yeah, I take back my hypothesis. But I'm actually shocked at the number of people who are saying you've done acid. It's way bigger than I thought it would be for Trump supporters. Maybe it's not a coincidence. All right, enough about that. Is there anything else at all happening? Is this the slowest news cycle we've ever had in the Trump presidency? There's a compliment I love. Somebody just said my voice is the best. It's like ASMR. Keep in mind that I wasn't able to speak for 3.5 years. So telling me that my voice is pleasant is sort of my best compliment. Do you remember, I just did a Periscope saying that this product, it's a Jackery spare battery, was terrible because in the dark where you're using it, you can't tell which side, and you don't know is this the side it plugs in, or is it this side? And somebody suggested, hey, just put a little strip of Velcro, which I did. And now it's fixed. Ta-da! So this Velcro, watch this. I'll close my eyes, and now this product, which was completely unusable in the dark because it felt the same on all sides, suddenly I know exactly where the Velcro is. I know that the cord goes down here. I know that the button for the power is here. I know that if I were looking, I would see the light. And I know that it's this side that is the iPhone as opposed to the USB. And all with my eyes closed, thanks to the miracle of Velcro. Problem solved. And by the way, a lot of companies should be putting Velcro on stuff, because if you can't feel it, you're not going to be able to use it in the dark. You got to be able to feel it. All right. Why couldn't you speak? I had a condition called spasmodic dysphonia, an incurable voice problem, which I found the one person in the world who had developed a surgery. That's the fast version of the story. And after years of practice, my voice is normal. Probably took 10 years to get my voice to where it is. Yeah, I talked about Philmod already. So the Manhattan Madam, he has been questioned by Mueller. Wouldn't you love to be in that meeting? I would love to be in the conversation between Mueller's team and the DC madam. What brand? If you're talking about the battery, it's a Jackery, Jackery. Did you experience depression when you lost your voice? Yes, which is very common. Yeah, it's like being a ghost in the room. It's not a good existence. How much time do you spend in the dark? Well, if you include low light, fairly often. Hours every day. Neurological or psychological? The answer is neurological. North and South Korea families reunited. I saw a headline on that. So that's really happening, right? North and South are reuniting. Do I like Bill Maher? You mean as an entertainer? His show is very successful, and I've watched it for years. It's hard to watch lately just because I'm going to be honest with you. Let me put it in these terms. And I know this will be a little provocative, but that's what makes it fun. I've talked to you about the uncanny valley, where if somebody is almost like a human but not quite like an android, it's kind of creepy. It'd be easier to look at a robot that's made of metal that's not trying to look like a human. That could look cute. Oh, it's a little metal robot. But if you saw something that was trying to be almost like human but was a little bit off, it would just be freaky like a zombie. And I think that humans also have the ability to detect illness, both physical and mental. So this is just a hypothesis, but it's based on actual science. So there have been studies that show that humans can actually detect somebody's health problems by looking at them. Not every time, but they're pretty good at it. And when I watch Bill Maher's show now, and obviously Trump is always a big topic on it, it registers to me like illness. Does anybody have that experience? So I think Bill Maher is, very talented, very successful. I've watched all of his shows forever, and taped everyone, or not taped, taped when I taped, but DVR'd his show, one of the very few shows that I DVR. But after the age of Trump, it was hard to watch it because it doesn't register as how his show registered with me in the past. Now, what I don't know is if it's just confirmation bias, and I'm just, I feel like, it could be just that. So it could be just that I don't agree with what he's saying. But the way it feels to me, on some irrational level, is that it registers as a lack of health. In this case, mental health. Now, again, that is completely different from me saying he has a mental health problem, because I have no qualifications in that field. I would definitely, I hope Dr. Drew is not watching me say this, because if he is, he's cringing and saying, no, you don't have those qualifications. You should not diagnose anybody. Even a doctor should not diagnose anybody's mental illness without speaking to them in person. So I'm not doing that. I'm not saying that he is having a mental health issue. I'm saying that I'm just talking about myself. The way I register it is like a health problem, and it's harder to watch now. But that could be my confirmation bias. There's no way I could ever be able to sort out the two of those. And when they talk about things like treason and traitor, those are words that I saw Bill Maher use. Oh, here's another word that I keep hearing: corrupt. Are you hearing this word popping up? It feels like they're A/B testing a new word, the anti-Trumpers. So I'm hearing his corrupt regime, corrupt. But when they say that, I never hear the specifics of what is the corrupt part. I know the allegations against, Manafort, but he's not really in the administration, and, some cabinet members, and that's sort of about the cabinet members, and, they've disappeared, the ones that are problematic. But what are people talking about exactly when they talk about this administration being corrupt? What are the examples? Because he goes golfing a lot and it costs money? I don't know exactly even what they're referring to. So is it just this general new insult they're trying out because fascism didn't work? By the way, wouldn't fascism be a little bit more obvious if it were happening? Oh, and let me add to the story. I was talking earlier how it's such a terrible week for the anti-Trumpers. Then you also had that story about the illegal immigrant, undocumented immigrant who was grabbed when his wife was on the way to the hospital to have a baby. And that was the original story. And then it soon came out that he was actually wanted for murder in Mexico, and that ICE was grabbing him on the request of Mexico for a valid Interpol, job. So basically, it wasn't even an American operation. We were doing it on behalf of our good friends in Mexico. The healthiest thing you could ever see happen is us coordinating with Mexico to pick up criminals. It's literally the healthiest thing you could have two neighbors doing, coordinating to pick up criminals on the other's territory. That's as good as it gets. And then it turns out that, the wife was on the way to the hospital to have a baby, but it was a planned C-section. So it wasn't like, she was in labor or something. So that story was so obviously fraudulent when it was first reported to make ICE look bad. And then when it was, clarified, it actually made ICE look good. The healthiest thing you could do, working with the Mexican authorities. And so, what a horrible, horrible week for the anti-Trumpers. That was all of their best fodder turned to dust. They blame the president of being unhinged, and then Philip Mudd goes on, and Brendan goes on, and even their own people are like, well, pull back. And Preet Bharara wouldn't even let Bill Maher say traitor and treason. He was uncomfortable with those words. So you're seeing a lot of failure on the anti-Trump side of the world. All right, I think I've said enough. There's not enough interesting going on. And so I am going to sign off for now. And I will talk to you later. Bye.